September, the September 1st PFF Forecast, and on today's show, it is a long time coming. Aaron Nagler is joining us. We're going to duke it out. We have a long conversation, but it is an awesome one, so you'll want to stay tuned and listen to the whole thing. Let's rock. All right, we're not going to take too much time on this intro because this conversation, it was tense at points.
This is probably one of our lengthier discussions in a while, but I thought it was worth it.
Yeah, no, we're not cutting any of it because it was, in my opinion, we've had the opportunity to have a lot of really great guests on, right? Mina Kimes, Josh Hermsmeyer, the list goes. Evan Silva's been on a few times.
And it'll continue to grow this week after Aaron too. As well.
Yeah, and like we've been so lucky. Robert Mays. I mean, I'm gonna forget them, but we've talked to so many great people. Aaron obviously had some disagreements with us, and I thought it made the conversation really genuine, passionate, interesting. There are perspectives on there for everyone. I
made some points about how we address things that I thought was fair, and I don't know if it'll change necessarily how we move forward, but it'll always be in the back of my mind.
I hope that every conversation we have in some way changes how we move forward, right? And it's not necessarily about changing the way you talk about something in the way, with what he's referencing, but how you support it.
Yeah.
How do you talk about things around it?
And how you get people into the conversation? Because as he said, bless him, because he said, I've been a fan of PFF, but some of the ways you say things might off-put people. And
in fairness, this is criticism I just get about life all the time. So nothing new.
But he's, but it's interesting in the sense that, it was, I thought, interesting feedback.
No, it was great. And so we talked about a ton of stuff. We obviously talk about the Packers from last season. What is a fraudulent win? What isn't? Get into Aaron Rodgers. We have a really interesting conversation about projecting players from college to pro and what that means for Jordan Love and what's Rodgers' future like. What did he see with Rodgers at training camp? So it was a great conversation. Here's Aaron Nagler.
Let's rock.
This is a long time coming. And by long time coming, I mean, it feels like 5 years ago that you and I were in a much different studio preparing for a Packers-Seahawks game that I still can't get out of my memory. We said some things. Aaron Nagler, who's with us now, said some things. And we're going to get to that. We're going to bury
the outcome of that game in all hindsight. Everything, the missed 2-point conversions so that Seahawks couldn't cover, the Ugo Amadi one-on-one with Devontae Adams. Our coworker that came in to just root for the Packers in our faces.
Yep. I think Aaron. I have a hypothesis that Aaron hired Kevin Ringrose, our good friend, to come in and cheer for the Packers. But we'll get there in a second.
Aaron's so far down the list of things to be upset about in that game.
Yes, and the things to be upset about in hindsight now, which is why it's great that we have him on. Aaron Nagler, co-founder of Cheesehead TV. Thank you for coming on, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me. I mean, it has been a long time coming. And I just want to start off by saying I did say a few things. Not a lot of things, but a few things I regret. In the heat of the moment, one might say, last January, I think it was. But we did meet at I believe,
the Combine.
A fine steak establishment in Indy during the Combine, and it was great to meet you guys. And yes, thank you very much for having me on.
We're not going to bring up those clips. I know exactly which ones you're talking about. You'll have to go if you're interested. You can go find them. They're out there somewhere.
They're out there, no doubt.
Whenever we have someone new on, someone pointed this out on the YouTube comments, which by the way is the 8th level of hell. If you're looking for for comments, it's YouTube. It's not quite. We've decided that the next frontier of commenting is actually on porn sites. But that's neither here nor there.
What are those?
So I don't know what you're talking about.
Someone pointed out that I like talking about food and drinks more than I do football, which is bullshit. But we do like to start with some food and drinks. So this is one of one of the icebreakers here. You are drinking a PBR right now.
Correct.
I didn't get the memo. Is that actually your drink of choice? Really, being a Green Bay Packers fan with all the good beer out there?
No, actually, because I ran out of Dale's Pale Ale, which I really love,
which is fire, by the way,
which is phenomenal. And I just spent a week 2 weeks in Wisconsin for training camp, and I pretty much drank probably 2 times my weight in Spotted Cow. So I came back to New York, and I had to dial it down. Like I said, I ran out of Dale's. Also, I'm doing a video kind of series about conversations with a Packers troll. Okay. And the character that I play as a Packers troll drinks PBR, so I had to get a prop. So I'm drinking this purely as research.
Aaron, are you aware of Carl Gerbschmidt? Do you have any?
I know that name. How do I know that name?
So I grew up in the Twin Cities, and the station there, K-Fan, has a Packers troll that's fake that calls in, and his name's Carl Gerbschmidt.
That's how I know it.
He works. He works.
He has an online presence, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he works. Yeah. He works as a road street sweeper in Elk Mound. It's like perfect, right?
That's perfection.
I think you have the right idea here.
So far, I've had one video where I basically got sick of all of the literal trolls just coming after me for. Like, you just get tired of it after a while because it's literally the same conversation or the same reaction or the same tweet over and over and over again. So I figured I'd just make a video of me responding to these same narratives again and again and again. And it kind of took off. People really liked it, so I'm going to do more.
That's good. I need to go watch that. That sounds like it's right up my alley.
So, George, you need a little background here. So Spotted Cow is from New Glarus.
I know that.
Which is not sold outside of the state of Wisconsin. So you can't go to a bar over here and get New Glarus.
I spent 2 weeks in Madison, Wisconsin.
That's right.
At the ripe young age of 21. And I had some Spotted Cow. I also ate at Tornado's Steakhouse. Aaron, do you know that place?
Look at you.
I did. I've
every single night because I had $50 to spend. I just spent it all on dinner. All right, that brings me to my second question. You have one meal that you can eat for the rest of your life, and only one. What is it? Wow.
Probably the roast beef dinner that my mother made for me last week when I was in Wisconsin. It was absolutely phenomenal. This may be colored by the fact that I've been here in New York in quarantine, living by myself for months and months and months, and have literally been living on takeout and beer for since March, basically. So I got to Wisconsin. I stay with my folks because they are literally 20 minutes away from the stadium. And my mother makes homemade meals pretty much every night I'm home. And she had beef stew, we did tacos one night, etc. But yeah, the roast beef dinner, mashed potatoes, gravy, the whole 9 yards.
Are you a horseradish guy?
For the rest of my life, I'm down with it.
Horseradish?
I'm not huge on the horseradish, but I won't refuse it if it's on offer.
I feel that the horseradish is a cover-up for if the prime is not good enough.
That's fair. That's fair.
Last of the icebreaker questions. We're going to talk a lot about football. What is one non-football podcast, column, show, whatever it is, even a Twitter account that you follow that you would recommend?
That's fantastic. Considering Cinema on Twitter is phenomenal. I don't know who runs it. I'm pretty sure gathering bits of information. It's somebody in the Midwest. I'm not quite sure, but it is absolutely phenomenal. They do incredible work of breaking down not only the history of movies that not only that I enjoy and know very well, but stuff that I may not be familiar with. Can't recommend them enough.
That's good. I need to broaden my horizons. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah.
Self-serving podcast here for George.
Yes, exactly. That's really what it is. All right. Let's dive into it. So the quote, I believe, I am doing this from memory, that I said.
Thank you. It always gets brought back to me,
yes.
But you were the one who said it.
But there's a
reason. See, no, because somebody asked the question.
I did,
and
yes.
Someone answered. So technically, Eric spoke the words, but George confirmed them. That's the problem.
Yes.
That's the problem.
So I said a couple of things. The one that I really wanted to talk about, though, was that I said the Packers were fraudulent 13,
you did.
13 win team.
I think that's the one that set my co-founder off.
I think so. And I mean, there was the whole defense thing, but I really want to focus on the Packers for a little bit here, because I think when you say the word fraudulent, everything else gets thrown out, and people hear that and they go, okay, you're saying they suck.
Well, you do go into a bloodthirsty haze as a fan.
Right.
I mean,
and I get that.
Not, right?
I get that. And that's one of the, personally, I believe that's one of the best things about football is how passionate fans are. And that's fine. But now looking back on it, having seen how that team ended up, do you believe that they were as good as the 13 games that they won in the regular season?
Of course they were. See, now you're gonna get me going right away.
There we go.
Yes, of course they were. They won those games.
PBRs.
And sure. Well, did they win those games? Did they count on the W? You know, is history putting an asterisk on it? No. And look, I understand the idea or the thinking behind. Okay, maybe talent-wise, metrics-wise, however you want to look back at it, whatever lens you want to view it through, you know, you can say X, Y, Z about any team in the history of the league. But the ball bounced a certain way. The Packers took advantage of it, and they won 13 games. So this idea that they were fraudulent or they weren't as good as their record, to me, is kind of ridiculous.
I look back, though, and I think to myself about another Packers team. And obviously you've been a fan for a long time. But I think this is a team that foreshadowed one of the great runs in the history of the franchise. I look at the 2008 Packers team, right?
Right. Rodgers' first year
6-10,
yep.
Third in the NFC North. Would have been 5-11 had they not run into the winless Detroit Lions in Week 17. So you look at that team, and you have.
By the way, Rodgers still talks about that moment in his career, like coming at the end of the year, walking off the field, the reception he got from the fans, how warm it was, how great it was. You know, these things. You know, these things all matter.
Fact is you guys rally around a team. So, and granted. Like, I remember specifically watching the 1-point loss to the Vikings where Mason Crosby misses the long field goal at the Metrodome, a 4-point loss at home to Carolina, a 3-point loss at home to Houston, a 3-point loss at Chicago. I remember that game because Matt Flynn took a snap as a personal protector on a punt.
This is a history lesson right here.
I look at that team and I say to myself, because if I'm a Packers fan and I look at that team and I say, was that team a 6-10 team? Do I have any hope for the future?
Right.
There are 6-10 teams where you have no hope. They suck. They're bad.
100%. Because of everything surrounding that season.
Right. This team, you go in, Rodgers averages 7.5 yards per attempt, 64%. He's better than Favre was going probably back to like 2002. Everything. So that team, to me, is not a 6-10 team. And then when you look at the next year,
they are. See now that
the next year they're 11-5, point differential of a 12-4 team, and then and again, this is it, Aaron. Right? This is why I think this stuff matters. You go to the 2010.
Unlike
team.
defense, got it.
Right?
Yeah. You go to the 2010 team.
Good memory.
The 2010 team was never behind by more than a touchdown. The whole
very much
year.
So. Trust me, all year long last season.
They lost.
That's all anyone brought up. They lost
to the Bears in the penalty-ridden Monday Night Football game.
Yep.
Overtime to Washington,
an OT game,
Miami,
exactly.
Detroit, where
the
Rodgers
Atlanta regular season game where they like muffed the snap. Yeah, of course.
Rodgers takes a knee to the head against Detroit. Matt Flynn plays a great game. They still lose to New England. And
all right, easy on great game. He played a good game.
They go to the playoffs as a 6-10 team in the 6th seed, and the cream rises to the top. Were they a 10-6 team?
Yeah, of course they were. Because
that's kind of where I
just talked about.
So here would be my question.
So clearly, we're never going to agree on this point.
But you get what I'm saying.
But I think
when you're trying to look at a team and say,
I get what you're saying in a sense of like you're trying to justify dismissing a 13-3 record.
But why aren't there
always there forever in memoriam?
Yeah, sure.
No one cares about if, when, why, or what as far as balls bouncing or guys getting hurt or the maybes would-haves, could-haves, should-haves. But then literally no one cares.
But then why don't wins predict future wins better? So why is it then that there are other metrics like wins adjusted for context
wait a second.
That are better
that's
predictors?
Different. But that's different. I'm not sitting here telling you last year's 13-3. Wait a second. I'm not sitting here telling you last year's 13-3 record is a predictor for what's going to happen in 2020. I would never do that.
Yeah,
and I have never done that.
That's kind of where we are, where we're in the context of trying to predict a game. Now, Seattle was every bit as fraudulent.
I agree.
If we're going to assume Green Bay is fraudulent, Seattle was worse because.
Are we going to? I'm glad you brought up Seattle because the elephant in the room here is obviously George's pick for Seattle to be the Super Bowl champion.
Bold prediction. Yes.
Yeah. But I mean, so because we got in this argument on Twitter last week when somebody said the Packers haven't gotten worse, and I said, yeah, I think if you assume that they're closer to the 9 or 10 wins that their win differential would say, I agree with you. Everybody gave their draft hell, all this kind of stuff, but you look at the roster.
Yeah, everyone gave their draft hell incorrectly, but yeah, everyone gave their draft hell. You're right.
We'll get to that. But I don't think the Packers have gotten worse this offseason.
Yep.
And the hard part is when I say that, then the expectation starts at 13 wins, and I don't think that's fair. Because if they win 12, 11 games this year, no one should be like, oh, they suck, they got worse.
Look, where you and I are in absolute agreement, and I think all three of us are in absolute agreement, is I think this will be a better Packers team with a worse record. I think there's zero question about that. So I don't look at the squad for a moment and think, yep, that's a 13-14 win team.
But when you say that, that's exactly my point. Which
We're maybe saying it hyperbolically.
Perhaps, but what I'm saying is if they were truly a 13-win team, then the metrics... They weren't.
No, see, this is the difference, though. You're talking about the past and trying to justify whatever reasoning you had for saying they were fraudulent, which they weren't, but you're trying to justify it. We're talking about predicting the future. That's different.
Right. No. Well, but we were trying to predict what was going to happen, right? And so if you generally the truer representation of who you are is most predictive of what you will do in the future.
Well, let's bring this to a different situation because I think it's good to say this. So the Packers drafted Jordan Love, right? Who was a good quarterback at Utah State. Okay,
that's generous.
Okay, but let's just say.
Wait a second. Now I'm going to stop you right there, George, with your generous. Because look, this is the issue. Because that soundbite right there is so dismissive of the fact that if you go back to 2018, he balled out. You look at 2019, not as good. But what are the circumstances surrounding that? And this is where I think you guys This is where I think you guys get in trouble. Because you do these things where you encapsulate an entirety of whatever it is you're talking about, whether it's quarterback play or whatever it's a team or what have you, or one side of the football being defense, etc. I think you do yourself a disservice by being so dismissive and glib about it. And that's not to say you can't have fun, you have to throw it out there or whatever, but as representatives for Pro Football Focus, you guys are supposed to have access to all this data. It just seems like the whole idea is for you guys to put things into context, but then when you are so dismissive,
that's the thing.
Devalues what you're saying.
Everyone wants everything to matter. And when you come out and you say, look, actually, we have this all wrong, and you way overvalue the importance of defense in predicting future outcomes, it's going to offend sensibilities. And that's one of the tough things about using math is that oftentimes it's right in the face of what you think is going to happen, and we have to try and untangle it. And I would say this about Jordan Love, because you're talking about the coach change, right? From season to season.
Coach, personnel around him.
Yeah, okay. So we talked about this with Bruce Gradkowski, actually, about quarterbacks overcoming adversity and how that is such an important thing. And my question would be, if a guy can't overcome a new coach at Utah frickin' State, how's he going to overcome any sort of adversity in the NFL? Shouldn't we see him transcend that if he is a transcendent player?
And I think, look, I think that's a fair question. And I would say, just looking at the tape, I see a guy who was coached a certain way in 2018, certainly was given a new system and new kind of reads, progressions, etc. Had a real problem getting off his first read. I don't think there's any question there.
No doubt about it.
But now he's with a whole new staff, and it's about projection. And if you look at his physical abilities and the upside there, I love him in Green Bay, sitting for a few years, getting rid of whatever bad habits he picked up in 2019.
No one,
I don't think there's any question that he's got bad habits.
No one will discount the importance of coaching and teaching more than Eric and I.
Yeah. But to finish my point, sort of talking about, because when we talk about the Packers were a 13-3 team. 100%.
Right.
Just the same way that, like, I'm trying to think of a team with an easy schedule. Like, not every single entity.
You could pick any Patriots team for the last 10 years.
I'm not, but there's a raw sort of truth about somebody, namely, like, hey, Jordan Love was a good quarterback at Utah State. And then when you fold in the context, that's where I think everybody gets a little bit touchy, because, like, we folded in the context about Green Bay, which was, year to year, if you want to predict wins from year to year, you're better off taking one-score games and calling them half a win than you are calling them a full win. And so when we think of, like, okay, I want to talk about this entity, I understand what the labels are that are true, right? 13 wins, that's true. Jordan Love was a good quarterback in 2018 for Utah State. But when you take the other things for us, which is, okay, I have to fold in his level of competition. I have to fold in, sort of his strength of schedule, but also his supporting cast. I have to fold in the circumstances, which were, in a lot of cases, a lot of non-NFL like throws. When we do all of that, I think when we say, well, we don't think he's a great prospect, that doesn't mean he sucked at Utah State as much as it does we don't necessarily know if that's going to transfer from one year to the next. The same way that we say we don't think, and again, you're probably right about being, the loquaciousness in which we talk about these things.
You said probably 4 words that could each be my middle name.
Yeah, but when we say Green Bay. Green Bay versus Seattle being a 13-3 team against 11-5 team, we're saying that don't view it that way, right? It's the truth is the truth. Seattle was one play away from being in the NFC, but being the NFC North or the NFC West champion.
The NFC West champs, no doubt.
Green Bay.
The Green Bay Packers were also literally that play away from being the number 1 seed.
Yeah, and Green Bay was like, the Vikings being the Vikings twice away from and my thing is okay, we just have to contextualize all this.
Okay, all right. Let me just I hear what you're saying about a lot of this, but let me just throw this out here. It's interesting to hear you guys talk about Jordan Love in this context and what you see as far as overcoming adversity, whatever you want to talk about in regards to his supporting cast, etc., or coaching changes. I get all that, but it's so interesting to me that, and this is a wider thing. This is probably way more than just the Packers. I'm talking about just the draft industrial complex in general, of which you guys certainly fall into at this point because you do extensive draft coverage, etc. It's always so interesting to me that entities that need to produce content, which obviously PFF falls into, Cheesehead TV is no different, but this idea and or need to look at what a guy has done in college, especially coming off his last year in college, and then making these determinations completely, almost, not entirely, but almost in a vacuum, as opposed and labeling it, as opposed to looking at whatever situation he's landed in and then trying to project forward. It's always this idea of, oh, you know what? He had a really bad senior year. He's with this team, and now he's going to be everything we saw his senior year, with no idea, no concept, or no nod to the fact that, hey, guess what? He's in this situation where he gets to sit for at least a year, probably 2 or 3, and then we'll see what happens, much like, say, the guy he's probably going to replace, who sat for a couple years and looked, by the way, really bad his first couple summers, and then suddenly looked good.
For what it's worth,
Our system does that.
Jordan Love was my favorite.
Yeah, but
pick.
you wouldn't know it listening to you guys.
I would like, and in fairness to us for a second, I think we try.
Always in fairness to you, Jordan.
Always in fairness. I do think we try, and maybe it's not to the level we should, and this is a good call out by you, try to explain some of the methodology, because I vividly remember Eric and I sitting in a conference room upstairs where the air conditioning did not work, so both of us looked disastrous, and it smelled bad, and we were trying to come up with this strategy.
Sounds like my apartment here in New York. Yeah, down with that.
It'll be winter soon.
Yeah,
and we were trying to come up with the strategy for, okay, how do we project? Because you're right, it's about projection, and it's about projection into the NFL.
The whole gig, right?
Into the NFL, exactly. Not what they were before, but all that we have is to look at what they did before. And it's more than just looking at...
No question.
It's more than just looking at, here's their overall PFF grade, because there's so much nuance in college. And so we thought about that, and we said, okay, this has to be a really careful and intentional projection system. And so I want Eric to explain it a little bit, because I honestly think...
I love how you pass it off to Eric. So here's the thing. No, I'm really earnest. I'm going to have Eric explain.
No, the reason I'm having him explain it, not that I couldn't, but he did a lot of the legwork on it, and I want to give him the opportunity to. Yeah. And I'm happy to tie up any loose ends. But I honestly think it'll answer a ton of the questions.
I'm going to ask Aaron a leading question, similar to the leading, do defenses matter? Okay. I love it. Aaron, is Kirk Cousins a good quarterback? Like a really good quarterback?
Well, those are two different things, aren't
they? Okay, so is he a really good quarterback?
I was about to answer yes until you said really.
Okay, is he a really good quarterback?
No.
So my answer, and I agree with you, but my answer is he can be if circumstances are great, right? So yeah, last season, Kirk led the league in passer rating on rollouts. They ran a ton of play action. They had an even easier schedule than your Packers, getting to play. Well, you guys got to play Matt Moore too, but Matt Moore, David Blau, Chase Daniel, blah blah blah.
I'll tell you what, nothing better has ever happened to Kirk Cousins than getting Gary Kubiak in the same building. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, I have some questions about Gary being the coordinator on a full-time basis just because physical.
I agree.
Let's stick to this, though. But I like where you're heading.
So, the delineated reads, the high to low, like, dude.
But
all in.
So if we project a quarterback from college to pro and we say, look, this team's going to run 20% play action and they're going to move the pocket twice, 2% of the time, and his throws – he's going to hold on to the ball on average of 2.7 seconds, yada, yada, yada. There are very few quarterbacks who are going to succeed in those circumstances. Patrick Mahomes, maybe.
Vintage Rodgers.
For sure.
Right.
Andrew Luck. Guys like that are going to succeed.
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins is going to suck if you give him perturbations.
Right he is.
What's his diet? Plant-based?
Yeah. He was the first ever Big Nine Vikings free agent that didn't get taken to Manny's.
Right. I heard Manny's, though.
Manny's
has taken a dive. A dive.
It's probably whatever at this point, which might mean I can afford it.
I can't even believe I'm here for this moment. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for including me.
So Kirk Cousins. So like I think when I think of Kirk Cousins, I think of somebody for whom those parameters affect play substantially. Mm-hmm. And
no doubt.
I think of Patrick Mahomes as a 1%er. The 1% of the time, this is what we got. Right?
Yep.
Jordan Love, if you look at his projection, the 1th percentile is Patrick Mahomes. The median is kind of a below average quarterback, but if you give him good circumstances, maybe like Green Bay will, although I'll challenge I think Green Bay is a great organization. They've only had one short-term head coach in the last three decades with the Ray Rhodes year.
Ray Rhodes year.
I don't know. Like the good thing about them is they bought themselves time with the LaFleur with the 13-3 record this past year. But I don't know if what applied to Rodgers and what applied to Favre with Holmgren is necessarily the same thing as what applies to Jordan Love with LaFleur. But assuming that's true,
no, I hear you.
There's a lot of good things. I would have rather him showed up here than to Detroit, or I'd rather him show up here than to Indy.
Well, and this is. I'll just say this real quick, and I'm sorry, I'll let you finish your point, but I will say this is the thing, what you are talking about right now is the thing I hammer on every draft season that drives me insane about people making lists and the draft industrial complex and all of it. completely divorces itself, seemingly, from the fit aspect and the idea of where these guys land. Way more. I mean, 100 billion% more, if we want to get all math on us.
That's a nice number.
Plays way more into how their career is going to play out than, whatever college tape you want to watch.
And that's the problem. I agree with that. The hard part about the predictive space, though, is like take Detroit. Jim Caldwell is a Detroit Lions coach that led the team to 3 winning seasons out of 4 years and gets fired. Like in the history of the Wayne Fontes wasn't even that good, and
they stuck with him forever.
Yeah. And they fired Caldwell and got like stability. Like predicting scheme is almost impossible in the NFL, except for New England, Kansas City, maybe San Francisco now, maybe we'll Green Bay at this point. But even then, like McCarthy's scheme evolved. Right from early on,
no doubt.
So like the idea of
very different.
I agree with you that we're not. We need to draw distributions for these guys.
It's an inexact science.
We need to say
it's a very inexact science.
We need to say Jordan Love can be good. We can't dismiss him and say he's going to suck in every single simulation of the universe. That might be where that's how it's taken.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, when you condense it into 140 characters or fewer on Twitter, that's what happens.
And that's the problem.
But what Eric was saying about Kirk Cousins is that the way that we project players from college to the pros is we look at their unique grading profiles in different situations in college. So it's not just about rolling it all up, right? It's about looking at context for those plays. How did they perform on those plays? And then it's about projecting them into a situation in the NFL. Like he said, depending on the context.
There are two. So if I look at the 95th percentile for Jordan Love,
right,
he has a projection with comps like Cam Newton, Lamar Jackson, the MVPs of the NFL in terms of passing efficiency.
You see, that's the thing. You see it. It's all there on tape.
But if I look at his fifth
ability,
Aaron, you've been spoiled because your favorite team has never had bad quarterback play except for Seneca Wallace and Scott Tolzien.
Brett Hundley.
I grew up with Randy Wright and David Whitehurst. Please,
Anthony Dilwig. But if you look at his 5th percentile, it's Rosen, Gabbert, Colt McCoy, Ponder, EJ Manuel.
And in defense of this pick, which we both said, we're on the record as saying that was our favorite pick that the Packers made. Because you
hated the rest of the draft.
No. It's not even about that. It's about understanding where you can win games, and not just where you can win games, where you can win Super Bowls, because that's the goal, right? Yeah. It's not to be mediocre. It's not to have Kirk Cousins. I would argue that you would rather fail quickly. Now, I wonder if NFL teams have the ability to fail quickly in this day and age. We saw what the Bears did with the Mitchell Trubisky disaster.
The Bears are continuing to do.
It's brutal. Yeah. But I am all on board with look, you're trying to win Super Bowls, pick players that can actually help you do that and that you can hopefully find out about quickly. And if they're willing to find out about them in practice and say, hey, in 2 years from now, we're going to take another quarterback, or next year we're going to take another quarterback, do it.
Yeah, I like.
Here's the thing that kills me though is everybody, and you guys are smart guys. I've talked to you.
Well, thanks.
We've discussed.
Thanks, Aaron.
Despite everything you put on social, you guys are smart. So I know you know this, and I know most people who I admire and cover the league and are analysts know this, but they get caught up in this moment of whatever during the draft or during whenever they're on social, etc., where we always talk about how, the worst time to look for a quarterback is when you need one. Yet, when a team actually goes out and gets a quarterback, when they don't need one, all of a sudden all hell breaks loose, and it's a terrible pick. And what do? Why didn't they get Rodgers' help? And here's the other part of it, is why it's hilarious to me that what you guys were talking about a little earlier, Aaron Rodgers and how he was Superman for a while and he's not anymore. And a fraudulent 13-3 team had this quote unquote terrible draft where they're looking to the future, but you just said they were fraudulent and they are building their program as though they weren't 13-3 last year.
No, it's very smart.
it seems to me that Green Bay knows what they're doing. Like, they are building it continuously. And that's why they've been successful for, essentially since the early 90s.
Well, I think in the same way that 2008 team that I told you about didn't panic, right? Because what was it? Was it Mark Murphy or somebody? Or I can't remember who it was, but basically they said after that season, like, we know that this guy's. They signed Rodgers to an extension midway through that season. They were not scared about this.
They literally saw like a handful, like I think about 8 starts, and they were like, "Yep, that's the guy."
So that team, to your point, isn't looking at that 6-10 team and saying tear it all apart. I think in 2009 they switched to the 3-4, which took some growing pains and stuff. But then, just like this Packers team doesn't look at 13-3 from last year and say we're the pinnacle, right? They know that there's a number of things that need to get better. And, they have to probably, to your point, get better just to stay the same. But I think that like sort of underscores. Now, we don't agree with the approach, though.
So, Aaron, the fact of the matter is that this draft one player matters.
Jordan Love matters.
That's it. That's the fact that they took tight ends and fullbacks and whatever the hell afterwards.
Everything you guys hate.
Players to be named later.
The fact that A.J. Dillon made you guys absolutely short circuit will never
A.J. Dillon had good projections for us.
A.J. Dillon has great quads.
He's fast.
But they took a running back in the second round, and that's stupid, etc.
I mean, it's mathematically unsound. Do you prefer that? But so
that's fine. Mathematically unsound is a billion times more preferable to, they're having a terrible draft.
Anyways.
It is.
Wait.
Let me ask you this.
Okay. Find A.J. Dillon's comps right here.
So here's my thing.
Yeah,
you comp all you want. Here's my thing. If you're a scout at heart, a guy who has gone on the road and talked to not only the players, but the coaches, the guy's teachers, the guy who maybe cleaned up after the kid, whatever. And you've been tracking him since his freshman year at Boston College. Mm-hmm. And he is the best of the best as far as humanity has to offer. Mm-hmm. And he kills it on the football field. There's nothing you will ever ask this man to do where he will not excel, whether it is carrying the football, catching it out of the backfield, blocking, blitzing linebackers, etc. And you want him on your football team, and that is the type of program you're building, I have zero problems expending a second-round pick on that gentleman, who I'm going to give, by the way, a decent amount of coin to come represent my program.
Yeah, and
I have zero doubt with that. And I understand that there is this large swath of the internet, of what analytics, what have you, draft industrial complex, whatever, who talks about the devaluation of running backs, how certain things should be valued, etc. I completely understand that intellectually. But football is way more of a personality/relationship business than you guys will ever give it credit for. And I understand that. That's your gig. But to be so dismissive of that aspect is what kind of drives me nuts.
I mean, I would say that's not something we're dismissive of at all. I mean, we've talked. Most of the people we've had on here have been.
Well, here's what I would say about it, Aaron, because I agree with you. I am very much that the person matters. What I would say in response to you is, how do we know that we're good at evaluating it? Because I am sure this guy has talked to all the people A.J. Dillon knows. Maybe that's true. Maybe he's literally been with him every day of his life. I don't think that's true, but maybe it is.
Not with him every day, but knows everything about him. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would question, how well does that person actually know?
I would just say that
this person's, this person, are they going to be the president of the United States? I just, to me, that is a little bit overvaluing things that, they matter, but they don't matter on the football field.
Well, it's sort of like a God of the gaps type of thing, isn't it?
They don't matter to you, because you can sit here on the internet and look at it dispassionately. You don't have to go to work with them every day. You don't have to sit in the locker room with them. You don't have to tell them on 3rd and 8 that let this guy through so he can slip in and I can let my quarterback go roll out and hit a big, whatever.
But isn't letting your heart get the best of you when science is telling you to do one thing, like a proven just bad way to do things?
What is science? Wait, so PFF is science now? Is that what you're
I mean, I'm talking about math. I'm just talking about
we're not even like. Aaron,
I'm not. It's not about me. It's not about PFF at all.
Throw our data out of here.
Yeah.
Like
just any publicly available set of data.
The only issue with the running back, and granted, everybody gives Green Bay flack for not drafting a wide receiver there, and given where they picked Dillon at 62, a number of receivers had come off the board. The issue with picking him there was you could have probably gotten him later, so you're sort of giving up value there by not trading back or something like that. And again, to your point, we don't necessarily know what's being offered.
Also, we don't know if they tried or not.
Yeah, we don't know what's being offered. But the other thing, the thing about it is we're just looking for sort of the best, like trying to get the best portfolio of players, which we think will have the biggest bang for your buck. And when we look at Green Bay, we see a running back in Aaron Jones, who's one of the league's best. We see a situation where the team, even with a top, probably top 2 or 3, but at least 3 receiver in the division, one of the best receivers in the game.
Oh, I was wondering if we were going to go here. Yeah.
But like you have one of the best receivers in football on your team. Green Bay's Aaron Rodgers' heyday was when they were trotting out Jennings, Driver, Cobb, Finley, Jordy.
It is most certainly not Aaron Rodgers' heyday anymore.
Mm-hmm. And when we look at, we're saying, because part of the context that you're talking about is how can you evaluate Rodgers if he's not given the same deck of cards that he had early in his career? We say the same thing about McCarthy too.
Because he's not the same quarterback. But, this is the other thing.
But no quarterback prefers receivers that are worse,
also know that you also know that Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones are in the last years of their deals. So you are very much projecting forward to, I could lose one or both of these guys. But and by the way, when and if I do, here comes A.J. Dillon.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
Look, like, a former top 4 pick, former top 4 pick currently available on the open market. Just saying.
Yeah, would Fat Lenny fit in the frozen tundra, Aaron?
Maybe if they had done a little bit more of the work I'm talking about,
more reconnaissance.
As far as like,
and there were players. You talk about getting a quarterback.
They went to take him 4th overall.
I think this boils down to the fact that you and us, we approach the same problem differently. The problem being that football is complicated.
Yes.
Right?
There's no doubt about that.
We agree on that.
No doubt about it. I mean, there's complicated, but here's my favorite thing when it comes to everything I've consumed with PFF, which I love, by the way. Here's the thing. It's like I know I come off as adversarial towards PFF a lot. I very much, and I cannot stress this enough, value what not only you guys do, but PFF does in general. I think it is incredibly valuable and fantastic.
All right.
But what I find,
you have to clip that, George.
I got but now I've got that out of the way. What I find hilarious, though, is that, and you just mentioned it, Davante Adams being maybe a top 3 receiver, etc. However you want to classify him as. Your little bit earlier this offseason about who's the best wide receiver in the NFC North, where you didn't even include Davante Adams until there was so much blowback online.
I have a great story about that.
I think George reassessed his evaluation there.
Because I got more data.
Literally your own metrics. You're talking about, the Packers are a fraudulent 13-3 team. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Like everything is past. That's what we're looking at to project forward. Literally, Davante Adams graded higher than anybody else in the NFC North, and yet not one of you picked Davante Adams as the best wide receiver in the NFC.
So I want to let you know,
absolutely blows my mind.
Okay, I have a story for this. So when I asked this question, I had done a little bit of research. I was trying to decide between the 2 of those guys. Now, first off, I told you this beforehand. I'm from Menlo Park, adjacent to Palo Alto. Mm-hmm. I love both Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams. Like, I legitimately root for them because of the Bay Area thing. Right. And Kenny Golladay is ascending. His wins above replacement.
He's actually about the same.
Was about the same.
By the way, I fucking love him.
Right.
I love him as a player. I think he's phenomenal.
Okay. So I'm going, okay, I'm going to ask this question, and I'm going to get Davante Adams twice. And I'm going to come over the top with, what about Kenny Golladay? Now, I'm doing a podcast with clearly someone who has a little bit of Minnesota Vikings lean to him over here. And Matthew Collar.
Right.
So I asked this question, and these two dudes immediately go elsewhere than Davante Adams. I'm like, what is going on? How are we forgetting Davante Adams? I couldn't seed from my take about Kenny Golladay.
Pre-production on this shit? No, this explains.
I'm just saying I was prepared. I was trying to predict how these guys would think. I thought they would talk about Davante Adams, how great he was.
Right.
Instead, we get Adam Thielen music. I was taken off guard. I wasn't going to back down.
Adam Thielen was literally posited as the best wide receiver in the NFC North.
I thought that was a little much.
Thielen,
that's absurd. And I love Thielen as a wide receiver.
Has the highest wins above replacement for a non-quarterback in the Vikings since PFF started handling the Vikings. Thielen's good.
I'm not saying he's not good.
I'm really happy for him.
I'm not saying he's not good. And to your point, Aaron, we had Josh Hermsmeyer on here, who, by the way, probably irks you every once in a while too, with some of the things he says.
Hey. Shout out to Josh. He totally irks me at times, but he also does phenomenal work. No one irks me the way Ben Baldwin does, though.
We're gonna get there. But we had him on the podcast, and he talked about this separation study that he did, and it opened my eyes to the brilliance of Davante Adams. It was honestly one of the reasons that, looking back on that Seahawks-Packers game, I wish I had thought, about the fraudulence of the Seahawks, particularly on defense, and their inability to fucking cover anybody. And and he brought up the simple fact that Davante Adams just fucking gets open.
Yeah.
And so I do think Kenny Golladay would be a close number 2.
We underrated in that game the ability, and we've learned about this offseason. We fucking studied it afterwards. The ability
still should have fucking covered.
We underrated Matt LaFleur's ability to put Davante Adams on the worst that the Seattle defense had to offer, and that is something.
Do you think Matt LaFleur thought Ugo Amadi would ever be in the goddamn game on an important third down?
But here's what irked me more than this. Is funny too, because this is something that has irked me literally since that thing aired that you guys did prior to the game. And everyone glommed onto the defense doesn't matter thing, mostly because Corey made so much hay about it. And so I just kind of went with it, etc. But the clip, and we put it in our social kind of preview for this podcast, where Eric, you're asking the questions, George, you're answering. What I think the very first thing you ask in that clip is Matt LaFleur better than Schottenheimer? Dudes, I'm here to tell you right now, Matt LaFleur is so much better than any Schottenheimer that has graced the sidelines of a Seattle Seahawks game.
So he's got a ways before he gets Marty's level.
I didn't say Marty. I said anybody who's graced the sidelines of a Seattle Seahawks game. Wow. So this idea that Matt LaFleur is this new.
We have a real difference.
I get he's good looking. I get we're all jealous. I understand.
I'm not.
But he can coach. He can coach.
I want to talk about Matt LaFleur because here was one of the data points that I pulled up to support our claim about the 13 win team.
Right.
There were 2 teams in the NFL last year that had a yards per play less than 6 and one more than 10
One was Green
wins.
Bay Packers.
One was Green Bay Packers, and the other was our Buffalo Bills. So
I love this idea that a head coach in the NFL is only measured by his offensive production.
Yeah, but Aaron, you got to,
because he has an offensive background.
And
you're going to give Matt LaFleur credit for the defense now?
I give Matt LaFleur credit for pushing all the right buttons. Ooh. This is a team that gelled inexplicably after completely fracturing under Mike McCarthy. Yeah. That doesn't just happen. And I get it. It's not quantifiable. It's not something you can point to on a spreadsheet. I get that. And I understand the spreadsheet thing is a very touchy subject when talking to analytical people.
I don't use spreadsheets.
I get it. But hey, props to you. But anytime you use the spreadsheet, people are like,
I know, I get it.
Whatever. But Matt LaFleur and being a head coach seem to work really well together. And I understand that his offense is a bit predictable. Hell, Aaron Jones's brother literally tweeted out during a Packers game live, Packers offense so predictable, because it is. And that is something he's growing into. He's literally been a play caller for 2 years in the NFL. That's not to say, not to dismiss it or to give him a pass. It's something he needs to work on. There's zero question about it. But there are a trillion other things involved with being a head coach than calling plays or producing a high yards per play average.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing. So what's cool about the NFL is, so we have LaFleur as an OC in Tennessee. We have him kind of coaching in LA, but not really having a whole lot in the way of responsibility,
tangible evidence of what he's doing.
But what we're gonna have is another season on him being the head coach in Green Bay. And much like watching the Packers in 06, I thought McCarthy was a boob. 07, I'm kind of like, okay, this team's better than – honestly, the 07 team punched above their weight class. Favre didn't play all that great in 07, and they made the NFC title game. Probably should have won.
Right.
08.
100% should have won.
He was an ascending coach, and it took us a long time to realize he was
declining. Was running the modern version of what we call RPOs in this league back in 07 with Favre.
So I would say that the book is still out on LaFleur, but last season was encouraging as a head coach.
Oh, you think so?
That's more than fair.
I don't.
More than fair.
You're encouraged.
I just couldn't believe you guys gave Schottenheimer the crown, run past king that he is, over Matt LaFleur.
I mean, but they were. I mean, they're the third down concepts that Seattle runs to get Wilson. I mean, I don't know. Wilson was a more productive quarterback over the last.
I feel like Mina Kimes should be here to get the whole This seems to be very much Green Bay versus Seattle at this point.
Well, which is an interesting topic of conversation. Which one do you think is the better team this year?
That's a really good question. I love John Schneider. I hate Pete Carroll, so I'm emotionally torn. I tend to think the Packers will be a little better, probably because I'm a homer, but also because I've spent 2 weeks in Green Bay watching this squad. And this is the other thing. Development is so huge in Green Bay. We have zero question about the idea of Brian Gutekunst at this point very much wants to follow the Ted Thompson model as far as letting guys develop. Obviously, a bit of a blip on the radar last season when he brought in lots of free agents and spent a lot of money. But there's zero doubt Green Bay will rise and fall this year on the strength of their draft class, not this year, but last year. Guys like Rashawn Gary, Darnell Savage, Jay Sternberger, they will tell the tale. And I think from what I've seen the last 2 weeks, I think they've got a pretty damn good team. I obviously don't know what Seattle's put together. I haven't watched them day in and day out. But overall, I think Green Bay will probably be a better team.
Let's get talking about the betting odds for the NFC North.
Yes.
Here we go.
Because when the offseason opened, now
let's lose some money. Yeah.
I grew up in Minnesota. I am a recovering Vikings fan.
Very much.
I have absolutely zero respect for the current Vikings team. I think they're going to be terrible.
Did you know this, Aaron? I didn't know this.
However,
I didn't. I'm learning as we go.
However, they are currently, after the draft, which I think is overrated, especially with respect to Green Bay, they are currently the favorite to win the NFC North. Plus 165. Green Bay rings in at plus 190. The Chicago Bears at 370, and our Detroit Lions at plus 500. Aaron, what say you?
Let's start with this question, because I think here's the way to phrase it. Aaron, you said you believe the Packers are the best team in the NFC North.
That seems to come out.
Yes.
I do.
You do. Who's their biggest challenger? What's the team that scares you the most? If they're coming in, it's a must-win game.
Honestly, it's the Bears.
Oh, my God.
No question.
Aaron,
no question.
No.
It's not even a question.
All right, let's hear it.
Not even a question.
Talk to me.
Go for it.
Talk to me.
Look, you look at the Vikings, and look, you gotta contextualize this in the sense of this year, this offseason, or lack thereof, a pandemic. Guys have been doing Zooms for months. Now they've been on the field for 2 weeks, and now they're going to go play games that matter in 2 weeks from now. I think Mike Zimmer is a hell of a coach. I think Matt LaFleur knows what's up against that defense. The Packers turned it over 3 times back in December, still won the game. Now, yes, the Vikings were absolutely dealing with injuries, but the Packers walked up and down the field against them week 2 last year. Again,
they didn't score after like the first quarter. Though.
After the first, because Geronimo Allison fumbled and everything went down.
It's the story of
what those games are about the defense.
But that's not what I'm worried about. Okay. That's not what I'm worried about. All right. I think those are matchups. I expect they'll probably split. I'll be thrilled beyond belief if they win week 1 because it's a tough place to play, crowd or no. But back in the day, Holmgren was in town. If you split the NFC North, you were doing pretty good. The Bears and their defense still very legit. Akeem Hicks is one of the best players that no one ever talks about. There's zero question that they have whatever they're doing at quarterback, which we apparently won't know until week 1.
The suspense, by the way, killing me.
Killing me, totally killing me. I mean, Nagy's going to abandon the run no matter who's at quarterback, so it doesn't really matter.
How many prayers is Nagy saying that Trubisky steps up?
Oh, jeez. But look at that game in Lambeau last year against the Bears. Yes, the Packers scored early. The Bears held on. And if Trubisky's not the quarterback, there's a good chance the Bears win that game. I see the Bears as a team that is competent quarterback play away from being a real issue week in and week out. Whereas with the Vikings, yes, you got Kirk Cousins, you got Cook, you've got Thielen, you've got some weapons. But how many rookies do they have in that program? How many guys in the secondary who you don't know the names of unless you're a diehard Vikings fan or a real nerd in an IDP league in the secondary who, teams can really pick apart. Now, that's obviously in addition to the fact that they just made this trade. They've got 2 pass rushers who will undoubtedly get after the quarterback. But to me, the team that worries me as a Packers fan is not the Vikings; it's the Bears.
So I think the Vikings are a 6-10 team.
This is
because of all the things you said.
What Aaron just said should make you so happy because it is the biggest backhanded slap, roundhouse kick to Kirk Cousins that I've heard on this podcast. It was brilliant. It was so perfect. You didn't mention his name one time.
Didn't say him once,
and
right?
you just buried him.
You don't need to.
You buried him, but you made a great.
Because you don't worry about him. He can be efficient. There's no doubt about it.
So you made a great point, and I think it's this. You're not worried about Kirk Cousins when it matters. You're pretty confident, in fact, that Kirk Cousins is actually not going to step up when you need him to. Nick Foles
has he yet?
Right? No.
Well, against New Orleans.
Right? Oh, yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
That's fair.
All right.
And thank God for that. Yeah. That was fun to watch.
That's true. But the point you bring up is like, look, if you have to be in that one crucial situation, Nick Foles kind of scares you. Because this dude, he does.
Right? A little bit. I mean, here's the other thing. He bounced around.
Does he not?
He was literally almost out of the league. And then Philadelphia picks him up.
Nick Foles is all upside.
Yeah. No, that's true. And Nagy was the guy that rehabilitated him in Kansas City.
Thank you. Yeah. Who literally is pulling the trigger on his offense.
You're not worried about guy that comes out and is average.
Yeah.
You're worried about guy that comes out and lights it up.
Well, Aaron, I agree with you. I think the Bears are going to be better than the Vikings this year. The Vikings having to start 3 new corners. They have no NFL interior defensive linemen. They're going to cut their left tackle tomorrow if he doesn't take a pay cut.
I mean, that's imminent, right?
They don't have a sec. Their wide receivers are worse than Green Bay's. All this kind of stuff. I agree. Why? And I know you're just going to say, well, look, the Lions haven't played a home playoff game since Brett Favre's first career.
Oh, I love it. Are we going Lions? Are we talking Lions?
Why? Explain to me why Detroit doesn't at least garner a mention.
Yes.
Well, no, it's okay. Well, it's not that they don't garner a mention. It's the idea of you asked which was the team, right? Mm-hmm. The team.
What?
So, and I know with all the discussion around week 1, the Packers open in Minnesota, so that gets the mention. But look, Detroit led the Packers literally every second of the game except for the final kick in both contests last year. So it's not like you can dismiss them. But they're still the Lions. I mean, come on. I mean, let's be real here. It's Matt Patricia and trying to be Belichick light. Quinn's holding on for his job. Okay, extra light. Diet? I don't know. However you want to phrase it.
No diet there.
it's just hard to take them seriously. Now, all of that said, I will say Stafford was balling out prior to getting injured last year. Legit balling out.
If the Bears have Matt Stafford,
they're the favorite to win the division.
They're a favorite to win the division.
Yeah.
I would say.
That's the thing that pushes the Lions over the top for me and probably you, which is start with the quarterback, go to the ancillary pieces second.
I also think for some of these coaches,
and I get they have no pass rush
that are in the middle of the pack,
right? I
think coaches in the middle of the pack, we are too easy to dismiss either way. So, like, think about Doug Marrone for a second. Okay.
I think a lot of people have been thinking of Doug Marrone today.
The current consensus is that Doug Marrone is a huge boob right now, right? Yeah. Like all this.
That's the thing, though. I think he's a good football coach. He should just have no say against.
But if you reorder the years, right? How different is he than Matt Patricia?
No, I hear you.
Yeah, because he's had 2 dog shit years in a row.
Are you positing that Matt Patricia is not a huge boob? Because I'm saying, what evidence is there to suggest otherwise?
Well, I'm saying that because like Romeo Crennel had a 10-6 year for the Cleveland Browns, Todd Haley and Scott Pioli. And they had a 10-6 year for my Chiefs. Now, it was a fraudulent 10-6 year.
These are your Chiefs now? Is that how that goes?
Dude, are you not up to speed?
Do you not know this, Aaron?
Wait, this is the former Minnesota Vikings fan whose franchise will never win a Super Bowl. Okay, all of a sudden a team wins the Super Bowl and now they're your Chiefs?
No.
Okay, I get it.
My friend Eric
I see the narrative.
Is Mormon with respect to his favorite teams.
I'm not, though.
It's a polyamorous relationship.
This is fake.
Yes, you have a very testy off and on again relationship with the Minnesota Vikings, and you and the Kansas City Chiefs sleep so soundly next to each other every night after having a nice glass of Chardonnay.
I will say I have
so much.
It has been a long time since I rooted for the Vikings. But I will say for that one touchdown pass against Philadelphia in the NFC title game 3 years ago, I let my guard down for a second.
I love it.
But anyway, so my Kansas City Chiefs from 2010 went 10-6.
Sure.
Every one of these dogs has their day.
Mm-hmm.
No question.
I would say,
who knows when it comes up? I hear you.
I would say that Patricia, especially now, like all of this, like the stuff where you look at like. Matt Patricia was the literally first coach that supported his players in a walkout of a practice. Like there are some of those things where he sucked the first 2 years objectively. Yeah. Jim Caldwell was a great coach they should have never gotten rid of. But
correct.
Like I think we're discounting him too much.
I have been using. I'm curious your thoughts on this metric, Aaron. So
I agree. For the record, Eric, I very much agree. I mostly take shots at the Lions because it's easy. And Patricia just happens to be the figurehead at the moment. But I agree. I think he is a good coach.
Here's the metric I'm using, which is the quarterback that sends out a text to the whole team and says, "Hey, let's do Zoom beers or something," and gets the most positive response. Matt Stafford sends that out and gets 65 gung-ho fuck yes.
No doubt.
Kirk Cousins sends it out and gets like Adam Thielen says,
"Have you seen his grill?
Hey buddy,
no one
sorry.
Wants to go to that grill.
Hey buddy, sorry. I've got yoga with the wife tonight."
Kirk is a very good mercenary.
Okay,
that's what he is.
God.
Nick Foles doesn't have more than 20 of the Bears' numbers to do that.
No, not even close.
Yep.
He's probably at Bible study anyway, and I don't say that to knock Bible study, but that's what he's doing.
And when Aaron Rodgers sends it out, people are so terrified to respond no that like they'll get a horse head in there.
1,000% correct. Yep. No one wants to cross 12.
Never.
Not to belabor this, but I thought Rodgers' interview with Brand was really good.
I loved it.
He came off as like a complete non-dickhead.
Let's talk about Rodgers here. Let's talk about Rodgers because he is one of the hardest guys for me to deal with because look, our job is to do math.
You don't have to deal with him. What are you talking about?
To talk about.
Oh, you mean
he's hard to evaluate.
Just to compartmentalize in my mind because I remember being a Niners fan. I'm still a Niners fan, but I remember that draft. I remember wanting Aaron Rodgers really badly. I've always rooted for him. I love the chip on the shoulder he plays with. There are like maybe 15 plays that I'll never forget, and Rodgers throws are like 5 of them, and I'm not even a Packers fan.
And he just keeps adding to it. I love it.
And his attitude as shown in that interview is just so cool. He's thoughtful, he's intelligent, he drinks tequila. There's really
night at least.
There's so many great things about him, but it's undeniable that there are certain parts of his game that are not what they used to be.
No question.
And I'm curious, from your standpoint, you've just watched them for 2 straight weeks. Is there a possibility that a little bit of fuck you has re-entered Aaron Rodgers?
Well, especially after the Olivia Munn interview.
Yes.
All right, relax.
I'm a Rodgers defender there, but talk to us about Rodgers and like where you see, because can he be Superman again? Where are you at with Rodgers?
Here's the thing. So I have a long history of calling Aaron out for whatever subpar play he may have put on the field at any point in his career. Going back to literally his first year as a starter, I put up a post kind of hailing his amazing toughness, which no one talked about at the time. I still think a lot of people don't talk about how tough he is as far as the shots he takes and how he continues to play, other than through broken clavicles, obviously. But and he responded on Twitter saying, "Thanks for that. I really appreciate it." The following week, I put up a post about how he needed to work on his 3-step drop game, and he got a little prickly about it. So this is back in 2008, right? So we have this long kind of, I have literally spent his entire career pointing out where, okay, maybe he needs to improve. So I come through the lens of Aaron Rodgers is not perfect. He is not a god among men, although sometimes he certainly appears to be with some of the throws and plays he makes. The run the table year in 2016, where he started so slow, he had such a bad first half of that season. That second half of the season, and this was my first year on the Packers beat when I worked for the Green Bay Press Gazette, was without question the greatest sustained play at the quarterback position week in and week out that I have ever seen.
He was
and I suspect I will ever see in my life, because week after week after week, he made plays that were just absolutely asinine in the sense of no human should be able to do it. And so at that point, that was after 2 MVPs, right? So you're thinking, okay, this guy is immortal. He can do anything. He can will it into existence. But then we've seen the last few years of McCarthy, very much so what you're talking about as far as a lack of efficiency. Play action last year was a real problem for this offense, and that stems obviously from the quarterback play. I'm not hesitant to say that while his numbers improved from his final year with McCarthy, there still weren't Aaron Rodgers-like. And I think there's no question that from what I've seen these couple of weeks in Green Bay, that we have a guy in Aaron who is much more comfortable in the offense. And I think there's zero question that he will play probably a little bit more within scheme, within rhythm, whatever you want to call it. There's zero doubt that they have started talking about that. Or they want to get that part of it going. But you will never, ever get Aaron to stop kind of hesitating on some of those middle of the field throws. Yeah. Those things where we see guys breaking, maybe not wide open, but certainly open enough for an NFL quarterback to rip it, where he turns it down inexplicably and runs outside the pocket and tries to find something deeper. There's no doubt in my mind that will never leave his game. And that is part of the reason, in my mind, they made the Jordan Love pick. They want to get ready for, okay, at some point, those plays outside the pocket, those plays outside of structure are going to dissipate and disappear to a point where you can no longer count on them to lift you up and get you out of bad situations in a drive, in a game, whatever. All of that said, I do think he is going to ball out this year. We saw a guy in camp these last couple of weeks who, and to whatever he talked about on the Zoom call with us last week, where he talked about going back and seeing cut-ups from a 2010 practice, not a game, to quote Allen Iverson, but a practice. And then he changed something. No one will ever know what until 10 years from now when he writes the book or somebody writes the book. He changed something in his approach, and whatever mechanics, whatever it was noticeable. And it has been noticeable day in and day out. If that guy takes the field week 1 heading into 2020, I expect him to look a lot more efficient in this offense. Again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you what it is. I don't know what it is. I'm not going to pretend to know what it is.
Sean McVay would have remembered the play.
Well, I think the league.
He probably would have.
I think to your point, I think the league is a lot better when Aaron Rodgers is deadly. I mean,
great quarterback play is great.
And so we're, of course, rooting for
doubt.
that. Here's the thing that I think is interesting about Rodgers. McCarthy, and it was the same way with Holmgren and Andy Reid now. The coaches that can take players who like to ad-lib and can build a structure where that player feels comfortable doing so, in my opinion, are on a next level of really good coaches. And you saw it with Holmgren. You saw it with, Reid right now with Mahomes. It's next level. Rodgers, I think, was one of those quarterbacks before. And McCarthy cultivated that to a certain degree. There are other coaches which
he kind of ate him. Yeah.
And we'll put your guy Shanahan in here, George, McVay. I think Kubiak is kind of like this too. And I think LaFleur, given where he's come from in this group of people, it was very telling that Shanahan didn't draft Mahomes. We didn't scout Mahomes and wanted Kirk Cousins instead. It's very telling that LaFleur appears to prefer a quarterback that he can sort of mold, right? And Rodgers gives him the heebie-jeebies by like moving around too much. To me, that's where if Rodgers is going to have success, I think long term in the future, that has to be LaFleur has to get over that, right? Or he has to go somewhere where the coach sort of embraces his freelancing and he has the receivers that will sort of adhere to that.
That would be an interesting future. I don't know if that's the path that it will go down, but it's interesting that you talk. Yeah, I agree very much with everything you just said. And what I find fascinating is the sense that, you're talking about McCarthy, and he very much tailored the offense around Aaron, giving him more freedom at the line of scrimmage, I think was the quote, than any other guy in the league outside of Peyton at one point, right? The problem is, and I thought Ryan Grant, former Green Bay Packers running back, who's been on our show a number of times, put it absolutely perfectly when he said, it's like AI, artificial intelligence.
Oh, not Iverson. Because I was hoping for Iverson reference.
No. It's like AI. It's like you teach it, you watch it grow, you're trying to control it, you're trying to give it more, and then all of the sudden, you wake up one day and it knows, or it thinks it knows more than you, and now it's in control. And it will never, ever cede control back to you. And that was Ryan Grant talking about that. And that is 1,000,000,000% what happened with Aaron and Mike.
Wow.
And what to me has to happen with Aaron and Matt, there's zero doubt, and this is what I'm talking about when I say this summer so far from what we've seen is Aaron has bought into structure a little bit more. Like I said, I don't think you'll ever get him completely, servient to the structure of the play if he thinks he can get something bigger down the field more, make a play with his legs, etc. But even if he's doing just a little bit more in that regards, I think the offense and the Packers in general will be much better served.
It's interesting because you talked about Mahomes, and that's one of the things people don't talk about this with Mahomes nearly enough is how brilliant he is in structure. The dude just is automatic. He doesn't miss throws. And he's got, there's so many parts of Mahomes' game that remind you of peak Rodgers. Like, he's never dead. He's going to make this throw that you didn't think was humanly possible.
And no matter where he is on the field, if he sees a guy who's open, he knows he can make it, he's going to make the throw.
And the good version of making you guard every inch of the field.
Right. Exactly.
But
100%.
But and so this you talked about this training camp. Contrast it to last year's, like night and day, or just a little different.
Man, I don't want to say night and day, but it's closer to that than whatever the other thing is.
Okay.
It's noticeable. And look, if you peruse the Twitter feed of anybody who's been in attendance of practice for the last 2 weeks, it shows up.
You're the only Packers Twitter account that I follow.
Well, thank God for that. It's just noticeable. It's just something where there's a play. And look, I did a whole video prior to leaving for Green Bay about how Aaron Rodgers needed to attack the middle of the field more. Mm-hmm. And I literally asked Matt LaFleur about it so I could have that content for my video. And there's zero question. Whatever metric you want to look at, a heat map, the tape, whatever.
We've talked about this ad nauseum.
Zero doubt. And I'm sure you guys know. He has shied away from it. And this summer, so far, he has gone again and again and again and again and again into the middle of the field. Now, I'm not going to sit here and take credit for it. I'm not going to say that has,
pat yourself on the back. That's all you.
Has spurred Matt LaFleur to say what the, and gotten them to do it. But it's noticeable, whether it's in rhythm off play action, the in cutting MVS, whether it's Davante on a deep in cutter, etc. It has been very, very prevalent this summer.
So you're saying we should bet Packers +3 in week 1?
I mean, we already are. Yeah. We already have. Okay, so let me give you this on
They
Rodgers.
Absolutely should win that game. Come on.
So Rodgers last 5 years in PFF grade has 2 top 5 graded seasons. In 5 of the previous 6, he was top 5. Okay, so there's kind of those 2 sort of errors. Now he had that one spurt that you mentioned where he was otherworldly.
Yep.
Can he get back to that consistent top 5 play? And if he doesn't, can they still win a Super Bowl?
Whoo, baby. All right. So can he? Yeah, I think he can. It all depends. Now, you're talking top 5. Are we talking PFF grade? Are we talking quarterback rating?
I'm definitely not talking quarterback rating. Definitely.
You know what I mean? Well, thank God for that.
Yeah.
But here's my point. I think will there be 5 other quarterbacks in the league who are better than him? There's a good chance that that's probably going to be the case, simply because of his age and simply because of various factors, whether it's supporting cast, coaching, what have you, or diminishing skills, whatever you want to throw into that pot. There's little doubt that there's a chance that he's outside the top 5. And I know Packers fans will come at me with pitchforks and torches and whatever. However, do I think they can win a Super Bowl with him playing outside a top 5 level? Zero question.
Wow.
100%. Now, look, if he throws for X number of touchdowns, which is way below his normal, and I don't even know what that is off the top of my head, but say he throws for 25 touchdowns, 30 touchdowns, which, for a guy who has at times thrown for 40 touchdowns, it's like, oh my gosh, it's not peak Rodgers. That's fine. Because more often than not, that's going to mean that Aaron Jones is running in a bunch of those touchdowns.
Oh boy.
In fact, Aaron Jones would have had a record-setting year last year, more so than he already did, if Aaron Rodgers hadn't tried to go all hero ball early in the season.
You meant to say A.J. Dillon. You meant to say A.J. Dillon, right?
No, okay. A.J. is not going to get all that volume. A.J. is going to see the field early in spurts. It's going to be the Aaron Jones show.
So what's the thing? Because I think I agree with you that I don't think Rodgers is going to be that top 5 guy. Could he be 6? Could he be 7? If he is 6 or 7, though, that means he's improved from last year.
100%.
Is it the middle of the field? Is that the thing? Is it playing within structure? What's the thing that if he just does better, that gives you what you need?
I mean, I think the thing in NFL analysis is always playing in structure. To me, it's what I always talk about is playing in rhythm.
Yep, that's exactly what we say. That's exactly what we say.
They're probably the same thing. It's getting to the top of your drop, planting your foot,
and letting it rip. Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's something that when Rodgers doesn't, and literally when I asked LaFleur this very question about the play action thing, about the middle of the field thing, LaFleur highlighted and pointed to a play against Chicago in Green Bay where they had motion across the formation to the left. Rodgers goes play action. Davante's on the weak side, runs a pretty deep slant, and Rodgers hits him in rhythm, and it goes for like 30-plus yards. And that's the play he pointed to. And if Aaron is that guy, down in and down out, they're going to be really tough to stop. The problem is you see so many plays, and I have no doubt you guys have done this and looked at the tape and seen a guy who gets to the top of his drop, looks at a maybe not wide open, but certainly open in the terms of the NFL, wide receiver, running back, tight end, whatever, and just turned it down for whatever reason. We've heard Troy Aikman, we've heard Kurt Warner, we've heard guys who have played the position at a very high level, at a Hall of Fame level, talk about this a lot. Troy Aikman makes no bones about it on broadcast where he says, I have no idea why Aaron turned this down. He's said that repeatedly. And that has drawn the ire of Packers fans. They get all upset. Troy Aikman has this the anti-Packers bias, et cetera, et
Which
cetera.
is mostly because Buck and Aikman call the games that the Packers play against other good teams.
Yeah, of course.
And
of course.
when it's
sometimes
Dick
those
Stockton
games,
and Brady Quinn,
right,
it's because you're beating up on the Washington football team.
100%. My co-founder hates Troy Aikman, and I have to the biggest fight we've ever gotten in. This is true. Ever in our history on our live show was about Troy Aikman, because I think Troy does a really good job.
Yeah.
And this idea that he has a Packers bias is redonkulous. And of course, it's only augmented because he dares to criticize Aaron Rodgers.
Well, you know why it is, though. You're old. You get this, though. In 1988, when the Packers should have lost out and instead beat the Vikings in Week 16, and then whoever they played in Week 17 and got got the second pick instead of the first pick. Dallas took Aikman, and you guys got Mandrich. That's why. And Aikman said he was relieved because he didn't want to play in Green Bay. That's why the Packers fans hate him.
I would suspect that that's a bunch of old heads who harbor that grudge, who are probably not on Twitter.
They're mad that you guys. They're mad that they're not playing games in Milwaukee either. So all that stuff.
I love it.
The rhythm thing is really interesting because we started a quarterback charting process that Zach Robinson, who is now a coach for the Rams with McVay, started. And his whole thesis was about these rhythm throws and how important it was. He actually talked about Matt Stafford quite a bit with how good he was in rhythm. And Rodgers is really interesting. It's exactly as you describe it. Your back foot hits, you let it rip. And the interesting thing about being in rhythm is that throwing in rhythm, even if you're under pressure, is better than throwing from a clean pocket but out of rhythm. Right.
100%. I couldn't agree more.
The numbers bear that out. And Rodgers last year is really interesting. His grade dropped about 8 points in rhythm from 2018 to 2019. I know everyone thinks 2018 was a disaster, but what that tells me is there's a lot of actual room for potential improvement there.
No, there's a lot of meat left on the bone for Green Bay this year. I
couldn't agree more.
It'll be fun to see because again, he's one of the best to ever play the game, and the league's better when he's good.
So let's get you out of here on this one. Your official PFF Forecast Packers prediction, because the wins are the wins are the wins.
That's correct.
What will it be?
I'm going to give them 10-6.
Okay.
I think that's good enough to win the North.
Real wins, though, not fraudulent
ones. All real wins. Albeit they'll have to fight into the playoffs. You know, for me, it's all about, like I said earlier, it's all about last year's draft class, not this year's draft class. If they get the expected development from Rashawn Gary, Darnell Savage, etc., they're going to ball out. They're going to be a real problem in the playoffs. But for me, I think they will be a better team with a worse record than.
So are they going to have to go to Soldier and win the NFC North in an NFC North title game type thing?
There's a chance.
Or will they have to do what they did in 2003 and watch the Vikings collapse in Week 17 to another team on a last-second Hail Mary?
By the way, I was in Lambeau when that happened.
Yeah, you guys beat Denver 30-10 or something. Yeah,
Ahman Green had a 99-yard run. One of the most magical moments of my life.
You understand this is why I'm a recovering Vikings fan, because no rational person would still be a fan of this team.
Nate Poole literally got a key to the city that next year.
That's right.
I lied. I actually have one more question for you. Aaron Rodgers will finish his career with what NFL team?
Man. Why? Well, we were having such a lovely time.
We were having a good conversation. We turned it around, I think, really well.
This has been one of my favorite conversations that we've had on this podcast.
Stop. All right, give me the Chargers.
I love
it. So hold on one second.
Can
I be a little bit facetious with you?
Sure,
so are you writing off? Are you writing off Justin Herbert in a way that we were writing off Jordan Love?
1,000,000,000%. Yes.
Okay,
they will. Justin Herbert will flame out.
Remember.
And Ryan Gutekunst will trade him to the AFC team.
So at least Aaron is being loyal to his entire thesis, which is it's all about the situation you get put in. He believes that the Green Bay culture is one that will foster growth and that LA is not. And I'm not sure he's right.
I, for the record, am selling Justin Herbert to
everyone that will buy it.
Have you watched Hard Knocks?
Not a second.
Is it bad?
No, that's not true. I watched about 20 minutes of the first episode.
All 3 episodes have been terrific. The low light is how Justin Herbert carries himself. I'm sorry, that is not a quarterback. I love it.
Hey, that was you, not me. Send letters to PFF.
Aaron Nagler, co-founder, Cheesehead TV, hopefully recurring guest because this was a blast, buddy.
Yeah, it was fun.
Appreciate you coming on, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Big thanks to Aaron for being so generous with his time, man. I mean, he spent a solid hour and a half with us. I also should give a shout out to Tyler, who's here with us on
the
Monday
MVP
night.
At this point.
Yeah,
right?
Well, Tyler's kind of the MVP, literally, of everything that actually happens at PFF. If you watch the draft show, you should know that was a modern miracle. So Tyler, thank you. But that was a great conversation. So thank you to him. What was your one big takeaway from that conversation?
He's really bought into Matt LaFleur. Mm-hmm. And I can't disagree with him, obviously, because the outcomes have been good so far. But I think from somebody who's a hopefully dispassionate observer, the two of us, to somebody who's clearly a fan, but very smart at being a fan, I think that's maybe where the disconnect is. 'Cause I think you and I are lower on LaFleur. Mm-hmm. And I think he's completely bought into this new regime, which I think after McCarthy got stale, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's a good takeaway. And I wish maybe we'll have this opportunity to talk to him at some point during the season. We can talk more about LaFleur because I just didn't think it was right now. He was so high on him, and I think we have a very different opinion.
If the Lions start out 6-1, and the Vikings start out 0-7, Bears are 3-4, and the Packers are, let's say, 3-4. Do we have Aaron on the pod?
Have to
have a talk.
Absolutely have to.
He's not going to be scared because it's not like the Packers haven't come from behind for 3 games on Detroit before.
Right. My biggest takeaway was just listening to him explain his methodology for how he evaluates things, and it gets back to like kind of why we say defense doesn't matter and it offends people. Is we're trying to instill like, okay, get the first. You say this all the time. Get the first order thing right and measure it somewhat respectfully, and then worry about the second order things, right? Earn the ability to talk about those. And he is very much everything. I got to make sure I account for everything. He talked about it with the AJ Dillon thing. Is he a good person? All these different things. The Jordan Love thing, take into account the head coach, take into account the context he's going into. And it makes for fascinating conversation. It'll be very interesting to see, how that does for the Packers this season. But maybe that sounded negative. I actually thought it made for great conversation. I thought it was a great conversation.
I think he has very reasonable expectations of the Packers, despite our differences on what last year meant.
So that was fascinating too.
Yeah.
He thought they were a 10-win team. So
I tried to explain to him the 2010 season, right? And I think
you hit a lot of seasons, by the way. I don't know if we had a counter. You basically went from like 88 all the way through. That was a History Channel worthy episode.
The thing about it is, again, if you're a fan of the Green Bay Packers, there's no trophy but the Lombardi Trophy. I don't understand what last year meant.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And I thought that, yeah. So anyways, we'll be back with you. We have a great episode coming on Thursday. We've got Kevin Clark, and we have a doozy planned. So you'll want to tune in. Thanks for hanging out. Peace out, guys.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel, from PFF.